Thank you. And really wonderful to be here on a real conference, meeting real people, and being back at Örebro, which was, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe something like that. I was here the last time. So I'm here with Mattias. As you can see on the pictures, we always have really good pictures on ourselves, to talk about successful digitization through Agile contracting. And I met with someone outside PIA, I'm not sure if you're in here somewhere, and I said maybe it's not the most interesting topic, but she was really convinced this is going to be useful for her. So I hope you guys also feel that. So when we started working with this Agile contracting, it was based on the feeling that we couldn't really succeed in the assignments that we had as consultants, going into organizations to deliver value. And I was a UX designer previously, and it was really tricky to deliver something that actually achieved some value for the real customers. So that was basically my problem. And then I talked with Mattias, you had the same experience. And we thought maybe we could do something about it, but we have to fix the procurement process first. And Agile contracting could probably help. So that's why we started agilakontrakt.se to try to showcase different successful case studies and ways to do this. So this is what we're going to show you today. Good. But as you know, it is quite many that has not succeeded with these big procurements. As the bigger they are, the less successful they seem to be. So we've seen a lot of these in the papers. So this is one, PUST. I was actually in a project at, what was it, Polisen somewhere, where they actually took our budget to give to PUST, this Sibel, the second version that didn't really succeed. So there was a double failure in my mind, because we had like 20% maybe left to be done with what we did to deliver to the police. And they didn't want that. They rather wanted to do this big procurement, but it didn't succeed. And then we had this also. Where do I look? Big IT systems and money going down the drain, not delivering anything. Yes, we can see them on, and there's probably a lot more.
And
now.
This sucks, right?
It really sucks.
It really sucks.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, this is
lame.
totally lame. We don't want this.
No, so we said, how can you help people to stop doing that? And that's where we started, because we were so fed up with this, and we saw no movement to fix this. And then Mia came and said, let's fix this.
Yes,
I said,
let's fix it.
All right.
How hard can it be?
How hard can it be? So what you hear is our story. And what I want to say is, 5 years ago, when we started to talk to people, say, this is what we're going to do, guess what the most obvious response was?
It's impossible.
Mattias, Mia, you're trying to hit the impossible goals. Give it up.
Yeah, why not do something fun instead?
Yeah. And we say, screw it. Let's fix this.
Yeah.
So this is our story.
It's a lot of fun to fix stuff that hasn't been fixed.
Yeah. So let's start. Why should people care about Agile contracting? Stop doing big failures, of course. But there are other reasons. And one of the reasons is there's a very strong movement to digitalize stuff right now. And if you look at any board's agenda, public, private, you'll see this somewhere written. The key here is that the digitalization can be made in two ways. Way one, build another system. Or way two, make the user experience awesome. And if you're arguing for the user experience case, that's when Agile contracting starts to become interesting. And one caveat here is, when does Agile contracting become useful? Well, when you need to do this in collaboration with partners. And this is the state of things for most public sector companies.
It's also a mindset, I would say. So for PIA, using it internally, probably useful as well, because we have agreements and we have expectations. We can manage things in different ways.
Yeah. So it's a strong driving force that's pushing for this. So it's wind in our sails, if I put it this way. The other reason why you should start to care about this is about effectiveness or doing good things. And the tough situation is, and I'm from IT, I'm an ex-developer, 70% of what we do is actually goes down the drain. And that's pretty pretty bad, isn't it? Like all the hard work, all the effort, all the pain, all the tears, all the joy, and then like, meh. Right? Can't we do better? Right? And to give you some data behind this, this is a study from Denmark, where they looked at all the public procurement portfolios, IT portfolios. And what you see here is that the product that ran well contained up to 60% not needed features. Right? And you can read. So just another data point to confirm what I just said. Right? We can learn to do this better. So the case here is, like, if you are investing in a big IT or digitalization project, and you have the choice A of doing it waterfall, or choice B to do it using Agile and Agile contracting, and choice A results in 80% of what you invest being meh, what would you choose? Right, so that's one of the reasons why you should start to think about this, and this is the case, one of the cases. So if we would paint a pretty harsh picture of what happens in the process when you actually work and procure with a partner, it could look something like this. All projects start with a grand vision. The bolder, the better, right? The bigger bag of money you'll get, the more inspiring it becomes. This gets translated into a spec. And everyone knows that this is the project that's going to leave the station. So there's going to be one try. Let's shove in everything we need into this spec because the train's going to depart once. And the spec will grow. Who do we choose to work with? Cheapest? The one that ticks off the most features in the spec? Yes, sir, we will do that. Yes, sir, we will do that. Of course, we will do that. Even knowing, no, we will not do that. This is impossible. But we don't dare tell the customer this at this point because we know bad news that means we don't get the contract. So what do? Well, of course, we commit to the project knowing the margin is too low from the beginning. And what do? We try to save costs. How do we do that? Well, add another feature. Will cost you extra. Make sure we have multiple projects running across our really talented people. Multitask. Right? And guess what happens? It doesn't turn out well. So yes, this is you could see this as maybe an extreme picture, but all these cases we've seen, like in different projects. So what's the challenge here? Well, the challenge here, if you take a step back and you look at this, is that there are two different incentives being created. What's the customer incentive here? What do they want? What's their incentive? Anyone dare to give a thought? In a traditional style waterfall project, what's their incentive?
Deliver all the features.
Deliver all the features? Anyone from the audience? Return on investment? Yeah, of course. What more? Guys, you're agile? Value, right? The more features, the better. What's the supplier incentive? The less, the better. Right, okay. But what the problem here is that there are two diverging incentives. And the worst part is no one is responsible for the effect goal. I dare you, go back to your projects, go back to your contracts, and check who is responsible for the end effect being achieved. You'll find very few daring to call this out. So how we will succeed if no one cares about the end effect? And the person who will get squeezed is the people in the project and the people who wants to get the value out of it. The second odd thing that could happen in this project is this. The moment that reality starts to diverge from the plan, and you in Agile know that's the truth, that always happens, we can have different responses to this situation. So first response, when the map, the plan, and the reality start to diverge, is, I hope the contract will fix this. Of course, there's a penalizing clause that tells me I will get my money back, right? Or I report it. Hope Mia fixes this. Or, of course, the third approach is do something about it. So which of these behaviors do we want more? Of course, obvious, but what does the contract incentivize us, both the customer and the partner, to do? Should be the first one here. So if you look at a study of what happens in procurement across multiple disciplines, and you just separate between the things that normally get discussed and argued about and debated between lawyers and people, that's the stuff on the left. And the stuff that people believe, even the people who are involved in these processes, we should talk more about are the stuff on the right. The good news is that the stuff on the right, what are we here to do? What are responsibilities? Those are the stuff that are included in Agile contracting. So this is good news for anyone who is engaged in these processes today. A third or fourth reason why we should care about this is about how long is a pre-study? How long is a pre-study, Mia?
It's a trick question.
I know, no, but roughly, like, what's the length of a pre-study?
When I started working, like, over 20 years ago, it was long.
It was long?
Yep.
Right. So let's pull out a few data points. I mean, real data. First, this is a finance company. 39 months.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Normal?
it's not odd. I'll tell you, it's not odd. And this is before it even comes to IT, right? Two other data points. Here's one data point from an Agile contracting procurement being done with a public sector company, 5 months. And here's a third one, also public sector, 3 months. And, oh, by the way, 3 months was not just the pre-study, it was the whole lead time from idea to out in customers' hands. So which side would you like to pick, right?
But we do have a challenge with complex projects. When we start, there's not so much that we know. There's just this little thing that we know from experience and that we can talk about it and we can see it. These are the needs that we have and problems we need to solve. And also we might be able to figure out there are a couple of things that we don't know. And we could maybe start to figure these out in our pre-study. But there will be so many things that we don't know. And that will happen along the way. And of course, this is why we need to work Agile, to be able to understand these things. And traditional contracting, it helps us to understand what we actually know. It helps us to actually put that on paper, maybe, and to make those arguments right. It's really good at that. But Agile contracting helps us to understand and experience and along the way actually make new decisions based on impact goals that we have. So discovering what actually is needed. If we need that, then we need Agile contracting. So, of course, you could use traditional contracting if you actually just need what you know right now, if that's what you need to solve. And looking at the map like this, we, of course, understand where we need to go. We have our destination. We want to go to Paris. And we need to maybe find different paths to take our way, to find a way to go there. And this will change along the way, and we know that. And that's why we need to have the flexibility to actually take different routes to our destination. So, looking forward to finding the best possible way together with our partners and to find a way to actually agree about things along the way, to also deliver value together. Oh, is it taking different routes? Yeah, maybe. So how do we do this? There are 3 different pieces that we need when we do Agile contracting. We need to define our impact goals, the needs that we have with our customers, or the people going to use what we actually deliver, and what we want them to actually be able to do differently. We need to choose and find a partner that can actually deliver value and that we can trust. And also we need to find ways to collaborate towards this impact goal in the best way possible. So we're going to show you these 3 different parts in Agile contracting and what they mean.
Yeah, so let's dive down. Let's look at each. What do we need to care about? So first, look at the effect goal and finding what the needs are. This is actually a leadership shift, where we don't care about writing down all the requirements, because, by the way, the skilled people that we put into the project, those are the people we are going to trust to find the right path. So let's not define it for them. And this is creating space for innovation. But we do define a few things. We define the destination, as Mia mentioned. We're going to Paris. That's our effect goal. So we know this. But we don't write down all the requirements. Actually, we restrain ourselves from writing that into the contract. That would be silly. And just to show you what silly looks like, I've picked out 2 extreme examples, which isn't that old. And you might think, I mean, wouldn't people in the 21st century know how to do this? So, of course, you know the story of Nya Karolinska. I used to live in Solna, so, of course, we are Swedish. If you live in Stockholm, you're picking up the bill of this 50 billion Swedish kroner and ticking. When they built the hospital and sent in the people to do surgery and stuff, hospital wouldn't support them to do the daily operations. So, of course, you know about this. But the most interesting thing is, if we compare it to a hospital that has the similar effectiveness, like can cure similar people, and was built by 1/10 of the cost, the difference is that Nya Karolinska was built without thinking about the effect goal. It's fun to build things, right? It had all the cool gadgets you can think about, state-of-art communication, robots that would transport stuff. With one small problem, the hospital didn't work. With Clinic Barmbek, the difference is the Clinic Barmbek was built by asking themselves, what do we want the hospital to do? And not until they understood this, they started up thinking what the hospital should look like. Small but very, very important step. And this is not so old. So, what is the difference between requirements and need? Let me illustrate it to you. Assume that I will come to you and say, help me build this. Should it have 4 wheels? Should it have a steering wheel? Fit 2 people? Can you build it? What am I asking for? Anyone dare to say? What would you give me? It's pretty obvious what I need, isn't it? It's written there. A longboard. Brave answer. Of course, you know this is a trick question, right? So I was asking for a Lego car, but maybe you were thinking of a real car, right? But isn't it obvious? So let's state this using a need statement instead. What's the most important thing? Well, should be fun to play with. Should be possible to create vehicles and figures with. And thirdly, anyone who's been a parent knows this is a must-have, right? So if you got this sort of need statement, what would you do? Well, you wouldn't give them Lego cars, would you, right? So this is the difference. And this is not a joke, because I've actually seen procurement processes resulting in saying that I'm procuring a toy, and I get, as a partner who delivers this, I get penalized for that not having 4 wheels because I had it using 3 wheels. And the only question that mattered was, is it fun to play with? So let's show you how bizarre this could turn out. So we want to procure for the effect goal and the needs. The second thing is that we want to work with people who are engaged and competent. Pretty simple thing, isn't it? So we choose a partner to work with, not based on the lowest cost, but the fact that they actually are competent in what they do, and that they can prove that they are. Seeing is believing. We do not choose partner based on how many requirements they tick in. That's not a sign of competence. Anyone in IT would know that. Sign of competence is what you leave out and say, you don't need this. You can solve this in a smarter way. So you choose a partner by showing real capability. I prove what I say. And that's part of the process. So how can I do that? There are several different techniques through this could be done. But a very simple one that's used in real life is this, a code camp. What you do is that you ask the partner to bring a team, the same team that's going to be in the real project. You ask them to come during one day or half a day, and you say you take a small part, a slice from your needs, and you give it to them. They enter the room, and you say, hey, we're going to work together. Here's a small part of what my need is. By the end of the day, please show me something that runs and demonstrate how you solve this. And then you take a step back and observe what happens. And during this day, of course, if you do this in a public procurement way, you need to know in advance what you are actually evaluating. Like, you have to have a standard for this. And that's okay, but that's pretty simple. The interesting aspect from the customers I've been with that have done this is that they all say one thing. We had this full day, and I know we follow the spec, we do it by the book, but already at lunch, I knew who I wanted to work with. It was obvious. The other side of this equation, if you take on the hat of the provider, is that they get a chance to understand, do they want to work with this customer? What would it be like? So it's like testing the collaboration in real time. And by that, they can grow a little bit trust to say, hey, this would be cool. And maybe bring some of the good people along. This will be fun. So that's some good benefits of using a technique like Code Camp. The final part, when you talk about contracting, is that we want to create a condition of collaboration and problem solving that involves both the customer and the vendor. And we want to build the solution incrementally. And you all Agile people know that's how we roll, right? So we actually prescribe this. We put this into the contract. And one of the things we care about is this shared incentive, that both parties care deeply about achieving the effect goal. And one example of an incentive that could be written into the contract is called money for nothing. And it's pretty simple. It doesn't need to be complex. It says this: if we achieve the effect goal before the time runs out, we split the remaining part of the budget in this way. Could be that the remaining part of the budget, 80% goes back to the customer, and 20% goes back to the provider. There are real-life examples where this has been 50-50, so you basically a shared win. And this has been put into real contracts today. And by that, both parties have an incentive to actually achieve the effect goal before time and find innovative ways which no one saw that makes it easier.
It helps us to choose the first arrow, actually trying to fix the problem. And it also helps us to continuously question, is this actually creating value? Should we be doing this? And help each other. So
absolutely.
It's really good.
Yeah. A question, yes.
Can you give a good example of an effect goal so that it's easy to measure?
Yeah, you need to be changing some type of behavior usually. So something should be possible to do that hasn't been possible previously. So you could increase or decrease something that's happening and going on in the organization with the customers.
Since we are filming, I'm going to repeat the question. So
yeah, sure.
So how do we? Can you give an example of a good effect goal?
So it could be decreased the time it takes to actually do something if we're supporting some operational practices in the organization. That could be one thing. It could be...
I will give you one example. It's not explicitly written like this, but it's more or less. It says, minimize the number of what the fucks in the daily user's daily day. It's more or less like that, right? And in mishaps or problems, like annoyances. And that's it.
It means that you need to then discover which are these problems, and then solve them, which is what you should be doing, not just delivering a system.
Cool. But very good question. Right, so we can come back to this by then. So if you look at the contract, how is it built up? So far we have talked about the process. Like how do you structure the process to get to this contract? But now we're down into the real legal stuff. So there's 3 modules in an Agile contract. First is the effect goal being defined together with the needs. The second part is that we govern and we steer the process. How are we going to work together? What are our responsibilities and liabilities against each other? What do I take care of? And how are we going to collaborate and work? So in here, you would see that written things like, okay, we're going to work incrementally. And yes, by the way, we want a product owner who prioritizes and who takes on this hat. Right? And the third part of an Agile contract is this incentive part. Like how are we going to share value and risk? And I'll see a question.
Yeah, about module 2 there on process and responsibilities. I was just wondering, isn't it kind of hard, or perhaps not hard, but shouldn't you avoid, going too deep into governing the actual process also? I mean, not stating, for example, the iteration lengths and so on. I mean, you don't want to go too deep either.
So the question is, do you want to go, how deep you want to go stating the definition of the process? And I mean, you're completely right. It's a very lightweight statement, but there are a few things we do care about. And if we do not care about this, maybe we shouldn't work together. And I mentioned a few things like we want to prioritize. Who prioritizes? We work incrementally and things like that. But you're right, then we don't go to very detailed level.
And maybe define that you need to have improvements within the process, which is the most important thing, which actually helps you then to change whatever's not working. So,
It is. It is. That's very true. And I'll give you one tip of what should be in here. And one thing that should be in here is how we're going to resolve conflicts. Because I said in the beginning that one of the things we want to do is we want to deal with problem proactively. And if we have problems, and guess what? All projects have it. Right? It's just a matter of how you take it on. This should be defined in the contract. And I will give you an idea, like what could be written in here. A real thing from a Karlstad hospital, which we will talk about in a minute. And one of these clauses in a real contract says, if there is a conflict between 2 people in the project, before this is emerged or elevated, the people involved in the conflict need to take a walk in the park before they come back to the steering board.
legally binding.
Legally binding.
Raining or not.
Legally binding. It is true, right? But there is some
Could also
some
sleep on it.
this.
Is also a good thing.
Sleep on it? Yeah, it could be a good thing. Anyway, I won't go into details. I want to give you something that's a little bit funny, but it's real, right? So, are there examples? Well, let's pick a few. And the good news is, if we were to be standing here 5 years ago and you would ask for the examples, I would have said, I think we can create some.
I think actually time flies. Probably 8 years ago.
Time flies, 8 years, okay. The good news is, today we can talk about them. So let's hear them. Karlstad Hospital. You wouldn't believe it, but this is procured using Agile contracting. This is a 1 billion SEK Swedish project, building multiple houses, and they have saved 300 million Swedish kronor to Värmlands läns landsting to this date.
So delivering under budget.
Under
How often
budget.
does that happen?
In time. Actually, the hospital was ready 3 months before the deadline.
It was also delivered incrementally.
It was
iteratively. They did prototypes on toilets to help people try and see if it actually worked for them to actually use it. And the other surgeries, rooms and stuff like that.
Yes.
So, and also they had keeping the operations running continuously, so they didn't cancel any bookings on surgery or anything like that. So they had everything working continuously and delivering a new hospital under budget, which is just amazing.
Yeah. And to build on what Mia mentions, the surgery room, they built one-to-one scale prototypes of the real surgery room in plywood. Send in doctors, send in nurses and ask, hey, can you do your surgery? And
What
said,
if just Karolinska did only this? That would
Only
probably have
this?
helped.
this small
Just
request.
build this, and
Small
then
request.
we can talk about it.
We can talk about the rest later, right? So pretty sane stuff, right? And it works. Another few cases. Let's look at IT. Svenska Kraftnät has procured a very big project using Agile. And a few of the comments you'll see in this process is the vendors who did not get the contract basically said, thank you, you're really competent, but no. They actually, by asking them what they thought about the process, they say, we'd like to do this again. This is quite telling, right?
Even
Tells
though
you
they
something.
didn't get it, they wanted to do it again. They liked it.
They liked it, right? And one of the things with this project, I can tell you, is that they knew from the get-go that the legislation that would underpin this huge infrastructure project was a moving target. So they actually canceled this project when they understood that legislation won't happen. So they have saved millions of Swedish kronor by not doing something which is not needed. Another example, TLV, an example of digitalization, also public sector. Just 1 year into the project, people who worked day to day with the digital products said, we have been able to solve a few key pains in my day-to-day lives that we thought were unsolvable. They're now gone. And when working close together with partners, so in this contract, one of the clauses was that the partner need to work inside the facilities, so in close collaboration with the real users. They said, I wouldn't believe we could do this, but now I've seen it work, I will never go back. So TLV, the interesting aspect of TLV is that now they are pushing the boundaries of what good digitalization looks like to other public sector companies. They are telling them, this is how you should do it.
And they procured an IT solution, right?
So they procured an IT solution from the beginning.
Does this also changed culture, the organization?
It does. This is an interesting thing. 1.5 years into the project, this changed how people thought about working with Agile, working with together, and working in teams. So this change has now driven TLV to start using Agile teams and in operations.
So they started their kind of Agile journey or transformation or something like that with this procurement.
They did. So this was the trigger. And when they saw this work, this sort of changed and spanned into other areas which was not IT. So there are cases today. And now we want to give you a question.
So we want you to think about and talk with the people sitting next to you, could be 2 or 3 people. If this actually is happening, it's working, as we can show you it is, why isn't this the new standard? Why isn't everyone doing this? So we want you to think about this in 2 minutes and talk about it. What is holding organizations back? Ja, många bra diskussioner låter det som. Är det någon som vill dela? Har ni kommit på grundproblemet och någon lösning?
English, please.
Oh, sorry, English, yes. Do we have anyone who would like to share? Did you come up with any ideas on why, and maybe do you have a solution to this? Anyone who would like to share something? No?
So bold ideas are welcome here.
Or maybe your experience of why it isn't happening. Could it be competence? We don't know how to do this? Maybe? Yeah. Could it be easier to do what you did before? Yeah?
Maybe in the old way you had sort of a greater feeling that you were in control, even though it's a false sense of control.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah.
It's a false control. Exactly. That's very common, I think. It feels safe to have everything written down, and you have a contract where you can penalize people from not doing what they said they would do. Yeah?
Hello. Yes. What was I going to say? No, I forgot already. What were we saying? Oh yes, that you don't understand that agile working methods are a new way of thinking and not just specific things. So you don't maybe think or consider that even the contract could be sort of the building blocks on which to build the whole process of everyone working in a new way. So you don't maybe consider that maybe we do need to have a new kind of contract to do this, to work in an agile way. And then another thing that we discussed was that maybe because the people usually signing contracts are people who have a very long experience working with something else. So for them to suddenly, I mean, contracts are complicated, right? So maybe it's a bit scary to just, I'm used to reading a certain kind of contract and now I have to think about it in a completely different way to be able to sign this, and that's scary.
It is. So that's 2 good points. Yeah?
Perhaps more of a question, but tightly connected to the topic. I was just wondering, you mentioned quite a few examples, whereas many of them were from the public sector. So I was just thinking here about lagen om offentlig upphandling, the law of public procurement, perhaps. Yeah. I mean, a prerequisite there wouldn't that mean that they are kind of driven, the public companies in this case, by the procurements here? How has that worked? I mean, as you mentioned, quite a few of these examples are public.
And that's why we pulled them up, because the most common excuse to not try this is there is some type of public legislation that prevents us. And we want to point a hole to say, not true, right? That said, the public procurement process instills some constraints that makes it slightly harder, but not impossible. And one of the things that it does, it forces you to know very well in advance what you're going to procure for. You can't change this through learnings in the process. Whereas in the private sector, you can use learnings to say, hey, that's a good thing. Maybe I should pay some attention to that. That's an innovative idea that I got to the process. Public sector, you need to know in advance what you're going to reward and what you're not going to reward. And you can't stir away from this.
So just for an example, with Karlstad and the hospital there, I mean, they knew the reward on beforehand by just stating, we will have a hospital, but we don't know all the details in that case.
Yes, they knew that.
Yeah.
And they knew specifically how they wanted to work. So that's what they procured for. And yet to give you an idea of some things they did, which is kind of brave, is in the procurement process, before any partner could be considered a partner in the process, the CEO of that company, construction company, needed to sign a document that said, if by any chance an employee in my company we would push them to do something which is at odds with the FECO of the hospital, in any case, they are not obligated to follow the company's directive. So it basically says, achieving the FEC goals is more important than whatever internal process that is pushed on you. And if the CEO did not sign this document, they were not considered. Now, what you might ask, like, why would you do something like that? It's a bit strange, and yeah, it's a bit strange. Why would you do this? Well, because you want to create a safety for the people working the project to say, we are going to do what is needed to do the best thing to get the hospital to work, and that's it. Everything else is secondary. And anyone that tells us it's not, screw them. And this was put up in the dining hall, where all the employees went and had lunch. So the employees would feel safe. We are here to do the best thing to meet the needs of the hospital. So an odd thing, but a real thing.
What was also different is that the people who were actually doing the procurement actually took part in this, the delivery, and actually took responsibility also in achieving the effect goal, which is normally not maybe the case, that we have different departments with different tasks. So procuring is one, but you don't really get involved in the actual delivery, so you don't see the pain. You don't see what's going on over and over again. So I think that's a big difference.
And one of the things, as you know, that small cross-functional teams do awesome stuff. You know this, right? So how do you set up a procurement process that's going to produce awesome stuff?
Cross-functionally.
Cross-functional team, right. You know this. So that's how you set up the process. And that's how all these examples we shared actually were procured.
And try something small and see if you can collaborate and build on what's actually working.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions? Do we have time for more questions? It's maybe a little bit over.
We have 10 more minutes, so.
Oh, okay. So, is there any more questions? Maybe not. Yeah?
Yes, I think it was in 2011, 2012, I was at a conference, Lean Kanban Nordic in Stockholm, I think. I guess you were there, and I think there were two guys from a law firm talking about agile contracts and how they wrote it. And to me, that was horrible. And I was a bit scared then. I liked the idea of agile contracts, but the way they described it got me a bit scared. But has that changed since then, or how has that?
It's hard for me to say because I don't recall that session, so I need to look at it. So hard to reply.
But maybe the standard agile contracts that you can use.
Oh, that has evolved largely.
Which was, previously, it was very difficult.
So the two things that have evolved, both the process of how you actually do the procurement, like how you set up the process, with the building blocks we showed you, they weren't described at that point. And the second thing is contracting. And the interesting thing is, less is more. So, to give you an example, in the Karlstad hospital, the number of pages procure this, maybe 20, 25, and that's it. So we're not talking lengthy stuff like this. So yes, evolvement has happened since this point. Any more questions? You take the chance and ask all the hard questions when we're here. Don't hold back.
I was just wondering what the biggest reasons are for not using agile contracts today. Or did we get the biggest reasons?
Well, to give you an idea, this is what we are sleepless over every single night. For us, it's kind of insane. Like, you have these good examples, and there are more than one, show you get more value in smaller time. Like, why in the heck are we doing more of it? It doesn't make sense to me. Of course, and I don't have the answers, but maybe this is the next quest to go and figure out and solve. So the way we see it is like, okay, phase one complete. Right? We have examples, we can show it works. Don't be scared. It's easier, it's more fun, you get more value out of it. Hey, come on, let's do it. Then this is the next level.
And in other Scandinavian countries, Finland and Norway, I think, you have to procure Agile if you're in the public sector. So they can't choose. So it could be the next step.
Hi, I want to hear about at the early stages.
because I'm guessing that it took a while to come to these building blocks and so. So can you tell us about any learnings or mistakes at the early stage when it didn't work that made you get to this point?
Oh, there's several. Do you want to be here all night?
Maybe that the first Agile contracts weren't that Agile, but they were created previously before we started to work with this, and didn't really look Agile.
But let's tell you one thing that we did very early on. So one thing we did was target the legislation called LOU, which was, the legislation. And we said, let's ask the minister who is responsible for this and, go all the way to the top and check if that works. And we did. So he was called in to the Riksdag and they were debating Agile contracting. But it was like, okay, this is interesting. But nothing happened. So we thought, okay, maybe wrong approach. Maybe we should start bottom up instead. So that was one of the mistakes, thinking can work top down. I think we still need to do that, but we rerouted and say, let's bring out a few examples then.
They only said the politics. We can't tell public sector how they're going to do things. We can just give them more funds or direction, but we can't really.
So that was a brick wall. That, okay, reroute, try something else.
And I think also we've tried to do things in different ways and maybe not succeeded every time. So of course, yes, maybe have too thorough requirements for how to choose vendor. Okay, that didn't work. No one passed. So they're finding the balance.
One thought that I had on this question why it's not used more, which might be a bit cynical, so sorry about that, but I'm thinking that perhaps the field of law, which is very old or older than IT, perhaps has more rigorous paradigms and traditions where things are done in a certain way, and on that way a lot of people base their their big knowledge of something which is very intricate. So for one, there might be a very well-established paradigm, and here comes the cynical part where there might be an incentive not to simplify something in which you have a lot of knowledge. So that's just a thought.
But you're right. There's a whole industry that earns money for this. So it is a stumbling block along the way. So it's not. It's a well-spotted thought.
And we talked about double loop learning. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that thinking. But if you just continuously do the same things over and over again, you will get the same results. You have to look at why are we doing things, the beliefs and thoughts we have around things and how things work, why we believe the things we do, and start to change that. So thinking about things in a different way. Otherwise, we will never change how we do things. So thinking this is a problem, can't be fixed. Then, okay, but it surely is some other way if we just try different things. And it must be possible to do things in a different way, even though we have these rules or things we have to also comply to. So starting to think in a different way and taking the leap. But if you don't have the incentive, you make money from this. This is what you do. And then, of course, you don't have that incentive, but maybe someone else too.
And one thing that we've learned is that there are lawyers out there that are extremely creative, very passionate, and very fluent-minded that actually embraces this. So on an individual level, I've learned that lawyers can actually be, if you give them the right challenge, they will be very creative. So there is something about the structure in which they work that forces them to do something that's very hard for the individual to address. Now, to round this up, you all thought we were coming here to talk about Agile contracting. Wrong.
Wrong.
We're coming here to show you how to hack a country. And this is the first step. So the challenge we want to give you is what sucks that you want to fix. And be aware that you have the golden bullet in your pocket. Small, quick iterations with small teams, passionate, driving, pushing things. So we ask you this was one of our challenge. What's yours?
You can do it.
All right, that's it.
Good, and there's more on Agile contracting, agilecontract.se, guides you can download, so some of the materials, I saw some people taking photos, there are more details there on how to do these things that you can download and use, and videos explaining different things. And Twitter, we never go there, so don't go there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.